Hello, hello.
Okay. We are live. Outstanding.
Wait, I'm not ready. No, I'm just kidding.
All right. Let's see here. We've got a nice crowd so far. Well, welcome to the Update Log, episode 9. As always, I am your host, Rob. With me are Greg, as usual. We have a new co-host, or rather an old co-host who never showed up because she's a slacker.
Excuse me?
Said what I said.
Rude.
Yeah, joining us
Truth.
today
Truth
is
is truth.
Sarah.
Truth is not truth.
Taking Matt's place because unfortunately
Taking Matt's place.
our Matt our Matt is gone. He's sick. You're only taking his place for today. You're keeping his chair warm.
Rude.
Keeping his chair warm.
And Greg's over there telling me that he's had a place for me this whole time. Have you been lying to me, Greg?
I look up there. Look up there. That's the host.
I don't have to look up there. All I'll do is throw my shoe at him. He's right there.
Yes. Welcome to episode 9 of the Update Log, where we discuss all things gaming industry, everything from video games, tabletop RPGs, to board games, to everything, card games, solitaire, whatever it is, you name it, we will talk about it and give our opinion on it. Today we have an interesting. What was that?
I was just
Greg?
going to add whether you like it or not is up to you, but
Yeah. I mean, you guys have no choice. You have to sit here and listen. Kidding. But hopefully you guys enjoy it. At the very least, you get to point at us and laugh. Today we have an interesting topic of discussion. Kind of continuing in the vein of our last episode where we discussed things more on the analog side of the gaming industry, i.e., tabletop games. Last week it was more kind of board games. Now we're getting into kind of a narrative design perspective for tabletop RPGs. And to give you a couple of examples, you know them, you love them, the classics, things like Dungeons and Dragons, Call of Cthulhu. Let's see, Cyberpunk, Red. What are other good ones? Travelers 1, Settlers Catan, kind of. What else? Pathfinder. Those are all good ones. So things where they're not necessarily board games, but they are played on a table, and they're more kind of in line with narrative development, developing a story, stepping into the shoes of a character. Warhammer actually does have a tabletop RPG. I think Moon Girl, welcome first of all. Thank you for joining us as always. Warhammer's a couple of different tabletop iterations. You have the kind of strategy war games of the Warhammer 40k like minis. I can't remember exactly what that's called in terms of genre, but they have that, which we actually have a good friend of ours who plays in our private game, who's a huge fan of that. You have Rogue Trader, which is their tabletop RPG version, and then they have a couple of other things that they do. But yeah, I mean, Warhammer's another good one. You're correct. But today we're going to discuss aspects of narrative design with regard specifically to tabletop RPGs, but with a focus on more modern takes, the good, the bad, the ugly, and kind of how they
And
have,
everything else in between.
yeah, and how they've influenced kind of the landscape of the tabletop industry. And there could be a couple Easter eggs in there for you guys, and we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Is Greg just sitting really, really still? Is he frozen? Okay, no,
No.
he was sitting really, really still.
I'm trying to add some noise suppression for Sarah because she's picking you up in the background.
Oh, I can just lower my gain. You could have just told me that.
Or I could close my door until I figure it out.
Is this better?
There you go. You good?
Okay.
Oh,
I just lowered my gain. It's all good. Now, if you get me yelling, you'll hear me over there.
Yeah. All right.
All right. So with that in mind, I'm gonna close the door because I don't want to hear her twice.
Wow.
Feel the love.
Wow. He's so freaking rude.
All right. So yeah, Greg, go ahead, man. You wanted to chime in?
I'm excited to talk. Really about the narrative piece that we've been kind of exploring here, with this and the changes that you see in the industry, as our temporary co-host here has pointed out. I'm a little bit on in the years, so.
Temporary co-host.
I mean,
it's like
we gotta have some fun with this because we don't get a lot of opportunity to do this. So
yeah, we don't know whenever you're gonna be around.
Look, I'm not Othello and I'm not the temporary apostle. Okay.
I mean, oh no,
I love
the
you,
evidence says
Othello. If anyone tells Othello, I love him. I love him.
The evidence kind of says otherwise. But anyway,
Rude.
yeah, I agree, Greg. There's been quite a surge in,
see, Aaron Monday
or rather,
knows what I'm talking about.
or rather, a resurgence in appreciation and love of tabletop RPGs. Not that it really ever went away, but I think, I mean, again, we're gonna, guys, get used to it. We're gonna use this example a lot. Dungeons and Dragons. It has been thrust back into the limelight after decades of kind of just really being carried by the community. And that's happened because of a couple of things. COVID was a big deal. The fact that everybody was stuck at home with not much to do. All you had to do was play. You didn't really have much to do for quite a while there. That helped. That was also furthered along by companies like Roll20 and virtual tabletops like Foundry, Roll20. There's a couple of other ones I can't name off the top of my head. These allowed people to take those type of games that you didn't have to have a PC to play or a console to play. Guys who were more analog, and kind of brought it to a virtual space. But D&D was definitely one of them. Call of Cthulhu was one of them. But going back to D&D, Roll20 and Critical Role, helped that. Like the fact that you had popular names, celebrities and things like that playing these games really helped folks and gamers kind of turn their eyes away from the video games for a moment, back to kind of the forefathers of gaming in general. I mean, without D&D, without Call of Cthulhu, without those kind of games, you wouldn't get Ultima Online, which was the forefather of the modern MMO. You wouldn't get what you have now without them. But yeah, you're right. Armania did help to kind of bring in the attention of a younger audience.
Well, don't forget one key piece to this when it comes to that resurgence, bringing tabletop RPGs, not RPGs. I think you and I were talking about this a little bit ago. And if you'd have asked people and the generational piece to this. If you'd have asked younger people, I would say 30 and under. If you'd have asked them 10 years ago, if I found this a lot when I would have conversations about RPGs with people, we'd be talking about role-playing games, but we would be talking about two totally different things. Because their idea of role-playing games was MMOs online. Because that's a form of role-playing game. And when I'm talking about role-playing games, I'm talking about TTRPGs, I'm talking about Dungeons and Dragons, GURPS, Gamma World, Cyberpunk. Some of the old school games that are out there have been around for a long time. And one
lewd comment right now would not be a good idea.
Yeah.
I mean, this is an 18
no,
plus
good.
channel.
I was going to say, for you, Greg, with your age group, RPG could mean a totally different thing.
Oh, wow. Wow. What
this
age?
Is why this is why she's a temporary host. Ladies and gentlemen. We don't need that kind of debauchery here.
Wow. Anyway, yeah, okay. Now my train of thought here, I gotta claw it back into play. Oh, so Twitch. I mean, this platform that we're on right now is also a part of that responsibility for the resurgence of role-playing games, because it provided a platform for and a lot of professional people, voice actors, aspiring actors, people in the entertainment industry to debauchery is our group's middle name. Yes, I agree. But it provided a platform for those people to really showcase their skills and take those skills and present them in an entirely different way, on a entirely different forum where they can actually create their own story and then perform directly for the audience, not through the platform of a movie or a sitcom or a video game where you're playing a role in that. I mean, where that role is generally going to be created for you. You have a script and all these things. This live streaming piece, is about as unscripted as you can get. I mean,
oh yeah.
So I'm sure there's probably some choreography that goes into some of these things, like some of the bigger shows. I mean, and if it's not choreographed in some way, then like with Critical Role, I mean, all their stuff is pre-shot, and then essentially they show it as a video. But it keeps it clean, and you don't, you don't really see how many times things didn't go quite the way they wanted them to.
Well, I'm pretty sure Critical Role is live. A lot of it is live, and then
the after shows are the after shows where they're talking about the actual show, but the shows are not. The shows are pre-recorded.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Well, I stand corrected then. I always thought some of them were live.
Most of the really big shows, and here's the thing with it. When you have 25,000 people viewing your stream, there's really no way to interact with that audience.
That's true. Yeah.
The chat is flying by so fast. There's just no way to do it. You can't really be interactive with your audience when it's that big. So I've seen some streamers that do, but they're not actually trying to tell a story. They're basically just chatting, and they try to really keep it more interactive with their audience, and that's cool. I couldn't. Maybe someday, but from my perspective right now, I couldn't imagine trying to maintain a high level of interactivity with the audience and having 20,000 people in the audience. That would be very challenging, because potentially that chat is just going to be flying by. I mean, we get a pretty healthy chat with 8 people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Huh. Interesting. Okay. Well, with that in mind, let's kind of check into the aspects of kind of narrative design that we've seen more modern RPGs.
I took us off on a wild goose chase.
No, not
You
really, not
never
really.
do that.
No,
But
I
there's
know, I know.
one thing that I've kind of come across from a number of different kind of more modern RPGs that, or TTRPGs that have kind of, I see some of the benefits of it, but I suppose being that I got my start in, TTRPGs with D&D, with the class, I guess I'm biased. And what I'm talking about is DMing or having a DM. You have a lot of games being created now that are kind of trying to push the DM-less kind of narrative piece or design piece. It's either DM-less or it's everybody's a DM. And for
Was
me,
that
I don't
someone
know.
clicking something in the background?
No, that's my dog who's
Okay.
chewing on her
It's
bone.
not
So
me this time.
if you're
Yeah,
picking
no.
that up, I apologize.
Yeah,
Sorry,
we can
chat.
hear that loud and clear. Can you get her to stop?
Winnie, leave it. Leave it. She's like, but Dad, I'm hungry. Give me 1 sec. Let me take her bone.
Sorry, Winnie.
So
don't kick her out here, because then I'm gonna pick her up.
In there. Go inside.
I'm gonna pick up where Rob left off there a little bit, because we're in the sense of what we're talking about is when it comes to how a game. Okay, what the difference between, like, I hate to say old school, but old school RPGs, tabletop RPGs, and what is coming out or passing as an RPG now in the industry. If you look at it, I'm sorry.
Rob gave the bone to Chance, and Chance looks at me like, "What is this?" Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
So, a lot of the RPGs that are coming out now are card-based games, where the more traditional games were dice-based games, and there's a lot of, I guess there's kind of a question in the industry when it comes to, what is the role of the DM and how should that impact player agency. And traditionally, the DM is the person who essentially guides the story. Ideally, if you're any good at running a game, you do exactly that. You guide the story. You create a basic outline and then basically fill in the blanks for your players, so that the players can, within the realm of or theme of what you're playing, tell the story of their character. But from what I'm seeing and understanding from the research that we've done, that's kind of under assault now. That, the idea of narrative is no longer about good storytelling, and more about the player agencies, which that's conflicting for me personally, because I'm really big on player agency. I really want my players to be able to tell their story, with the idea being that I will step back and provide framework for that story. That's kind of my take on where we're headed tonight, Rob.
No, I agree. So some of the research that we've done, there's been talk about uh, how, in terms of D&D, and D&D was used as an example rather, and as opposed to more modern day um, uh, TTRPGs, that D&D was made to be less storytelling than modern TTRPGs, which it kind of it kind of took me aback a little bit. I'm not gonna lie, because either this person or these people have played at terrible tables, or I'm just gonna say they have no idea what the hell they're talking about. Because D&D, first and foremost, is a collaborative storytelling process. The DM is there, like Greg said, to facilitate that story, to push that narrative, to basically keep the story moving forward. However, the players and player agency are what push that story, are what make that story go. Hell, that the players are what make the story. So that was to find that's kind of a prevalent idea, or a prevalent push with these more modern day TTRPGs, is honestly, it leaves me a little concerned.
Well, in many ways, we've stepped, not just away from those legacy games. Like I said, most of the newer games are really they're designed to be short games, so they're designed to be more or less one shots. So there is no continuing story. You're not creating a character and then playing a story arc with that character. You're doing one shots, where you're just playing an immediate story based on preset conditions, more or less. Possibly preset characters even, because that's become very popular, is to have character presets so that it's ready out of the box and you just pick one of these characters and then run with that character. Then the concept of not having a GM or a DM or whatever you want to call them, not having someone to narrate the game, where the players just become the narrators. I think I told you that, to me, that feels like, stepping back into my college days and playing the beer drinking games. Because that's what that was. I mean, where it really was just, okay, all the players and you, sometimes you had some story there. I mean, that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
It's not true storytelling. That's the thing. Is you're basically just telling a right now. You're telling a tale, essentially. You're not really telling a story of a character or of the surrounding circumstance. There's to me, there's no narrative in it. It's narrative less.
Yeah, I agree.
What the concept I think I heard was basically going. The argument was that we're not trying to go GM less, we're trying to go GM full, I think is what I heard.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? Okay. No, that just doesn't work. I think we've all experienced this at one point or another. We all have different ideas. Every player that sits down at the table. Now, if you have a really good group, because you can all put the story together from your individual perspective, and you can work together to tell a story. And that's kind of the concept. That's the idea behind it, is to work together to tell a story. Still be able to get the key features of the story that you want to tell worked into the overall story, but you're telling that story with the larger group. And that's an important piece to tabletop RPGs. It's storytelling in general. And the one key takeaway that I have there is that what we've done is we've shifted, or what we're trying to do. We're not trying to do this. I think it's an industry piece. Is we're trying to shift away from the traditional story arc of the hero's journey, and
Yes.
make this into I don't even know what to call it, but it's in my opinion, it's not storytelling.
No, and here's the thing. I think we can kind of all agree. The hero's journey it's a storytelling process that has been around for a very long time. And it works. It just flat out works. It doesn't need any new coat of paint, doesn't need any adjustments. It just works because it hits all the points that we as human beings can relate to. And Greg, you're whatever it is that's bright as hell on your end. It's
yes.
bright.
There.
Go.
Sorry about that.
Someone put a spotlight on you for a second, man. But yeah, like it just works. So trying to, and here's the thing: I'm not against innovation. I'm not against improvement. And I'm not going to sit here and say that you can't improve on something because it's fundamentally counter to game development, to development in general.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you're going to develop, if you're going to iterate, if you're going to try to improve on something, you don't get rid of the foundation. You don't try to just, toss the foundation out. You use the foundation as a basis to improve. And that's kind of what it feels like is happening in the TTRPG space, but also in just the storytelling arena.
Mm-hmm.
People are trying to tell stories in a different way that, to me, and this is my opinion, it makes zero sense. Well, they try to tell a story from a unique perspective
Mm-hmm.
that is unrelatable. If I can't relate to it, then the story doesn't matter to me. Whatever points you're trying to make don't matter. Whatever lessons you're trying to teach, they're not going to land.
Right. Right.
But Sarah, you're actually suspiciously quiet. What do you think?
I was just waiting until I could talk.
I mean, you can interject at any time.
Are you saying that we talk too much?
Yes.
How about you speak up?
I wasn't able to get a word in edgewise because I didn't want to be rude. But yes, I have lots to say, actually.
Uh-oh.
You've unleashed so the hero's journey is something that has been tried and true for millennia. It's historical. You look back at any of the stories, mythological stories, even biblical stories. You look at all the stories going on in the world, you can see. I love the book. I think it's called like The Hero's Journey, something or another. I already listened to the book, but like it's true. Like the rise and fall of our hero, and then that redemption arc where he goes from what he was to something new. That whole the whole resurrection type idea of like the old has passed away and now something new has come up. That entire arc, that entire storytelling, it's in everything. It's in history, it's in movies, it's in books, it's in some of our favorite books. Lord of the Rings, he has it all over the place. So, yeah, it's tried and true, and it's a story that's powerful that everyone does love, or at least the vast majority, because it's survived a millennia, several millennia of all the cultures around the world basically doing the same thing. Different ways of telling it, sure. Music, poem, art, etc. Like there's different ways of telling it for sure. But like if there's like one thing true that you can see with the hero's journey is that there's a narrator. There's someone telling the story, whether it's from the hero's perspective, where you see everything the hero sees, everything the hero thinks, etc., or third person perspective, or as I like to say, fly on the wall perspective. That type thing. There's different perspectives to tell the story, but like there's still a narrator. And then like this whole push to be DM-less or GM-less. It's like trying to say I want to tell a story without telling any narration whatsoever. What? Really? Like how? Like even so to give an example, my Guild Wars 2 crew that I role play with, we are all GMs and we are all players. Our entire roleplay community, all of us have participated in one way or another as being a GM. But one of us was a GM while the rest of us participated in that story that the one wrote. And even like right now, we're making plans to do stuff to our guild hall and have some sort of big catastrophe happen to certain characters and stuff. And we're planning it out. And then we're like, okay, like we want this to happen. This is the outcome we want to happen. But then we're going to like RP it out together and do it that way. And it's a very free form type of RP. But it's one where we have been telling this story for, oh gosh, I don't even know, 7 years, 8 years. We've been together for a long time and we've been doing it. But the fact that I'm trying to say is there's still a GM dealing with whatever it is that we're going to do. And the rest of us are telling the story. But it is that collaborative thing that Greg was talking about earlier. It's still that collaborative thing where all of us are coming together to create that story. And so, and it's been a great, crazy story. If any of the butterflies watch this, it's been great. But yeah, so it's just like, you still need that narration. You still need that person to kind of guide and direct things to make sure they go in a direction instead of just all over the place. Because then your story is like trying to herd cats. Nobody wants to read that. No one wants to be part of that.
What do you mean? I do that all the time.
Herding cats is no fun. Herding ferrets, forget it. But herding cats is no fun. Like, no, thank you.
No, that's
talking about all those points, hitting everything that you guys talked about.
That's good. That's good stuff. I personally, I want to see the industry kind of take a step back into more storytelling, more good storytelling. I do think that, speaking of games creation, stuff like that, the games of the future, I think it's important to design games of the future with more interactivity for your player, giving them more ability to be able to tell their story, not by removing the narration piece to it, not by removing things like lore and history. And I'm a big fan of not getting too caught up in lore. Not trying to develop the lore out to the point where you lock everything in and there's an explanation for everything. it needs to be open enough that the character, the player, the individual group of players and their GM can use the basic lore and then expand it into, this is our version of this game. I think games that are too locked into lore, they tend to be, they may be very popular for a little while when they first come out, but in the long run, they don't last because it's not something that people, you know what I mean? You can't be creative.
It's too rigid.
Right. You're locked into this story, and it's like, okay, well, but, this is fun to begin with, but it's just like playing a video game. I mean, once you beat the game...
That's it. Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah. What do I do now?
Like, that's honestly why TTRPGs are... The replayability, the replay value for TTRPGs is far and away better than almost any video game, without question. Because a lot of folks who are talking that whole GM-less and DM-less, the titles are interchangeable, kind of slant, are really forgetting the GM and player fiat. Like, you don't have, you can take the base rules, you can take the rules and use them, but you don't have to play in Faerun or the Forgotten Realms or Spelljammer or Barovia or any of these places. You can play in something that you create.
But you have to play in Sigil, you have to.
I mean, you don't have to play there either. Sigil is fun, but you don't have to play there either. And yeah, Armani, your story changes every time. Choices can changes, according to the characters you play. Yeah, 100%. That's why, tabletop RPGs like D&D and, Call of Cthulhu and Cyberpunk and all those, games that have, Shadowruns, that have the narrative depth to be like, you know what, I want to do something different. And oftentimes...
That's part of the reason why MMORPGs for me have actually gotten a little boring. That's why I look for an RP group in those MMOs, because that's what makes it fun for me. I've tried to go back to play Guild Wars 2 to play the game, and I'm like, I have more fun role-playing in here than I do playing the actual game.
Yeah. I mean, that's a whole other kettle of fish of why that game has suffered over the years. We'll go into that. But yeah, it's surprising that there's been a push to kind of get rid of the GM role. And one of the arguments for that, it seems, has been to kind of spread the responsibility of storytelling, of the storytelling process. And as you guys have heard it here, at least hopefully we've made it obvious, storytelling process doesn't begin or end with the DM. Mm-hmm. If okay, I'm gonna put a caveat in there. If it's a good DM, okay, I'm gonna call it, down the middle. They're shit GMs. They're absolutely terrible GMs that don't know their ass from their elbow. And you can agree or disagree. That's fine. That's my opinion. But a good DM will create a story with his or her players. The players are integral to the story. The DM is there to guide that story. I mean, granted, the DM is also integral to that story, but it's a collaborative storytelling process. It's not just the DM sitting down like, all right, here's the story, go ahead and play it. And I feel like that is the main part of why there's been such a push for this, is because you've had a lot of people who are more than likely have experienced GMs who are like that. And for me, that's not a design issue. That's not a narrative design issue. That's not a game design issue. That's a people issue. That's more of a person-to-person issue where people really have to understand the role of the GM. And from my opinion and my perspective, the role of a GM is to facilitate the story, is to help guide the story in terms of keeping. I'm not even gonna say keeping things on track, but keeping things moving in whatever direction they move. Because I mean, myself and Greg, we both DM games for our friend group, of which Sarah is part of.
I've DM too.
And yeah, you did DM that one time.
And it was fun.
I'm glad you had a good time. But I mean, I'm sure he'll agree with me. There are the times where we've had a plan and they went left when people try to go right.
Oh, do I have stories?
Or like there's so many times where we would have to probably sit there. At least I know I have, where I've had to just come up with shit on the fly because they took a completely different route. That's the role of a GM.
Yeah,
that's the role of a GM.
Stories, especially when I was dealing with Vanguard. Gosh, majority of the time I threw away a lot of things and I was just like, what are they doing? Let me play along with that.
Yeah, like your job as a GM, and I think if more people understood that, I don't think people would be so quick to get rid of the DM.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, she disappeared. Rip.
I had a feeling that was going to happen. There we go. Yeah. She'll be back in just a second.
There you go. I'm back.
There you are.
Yes, Moongirl,
the ability to adapt is essential. It very much is. Yeah. And yes, Aramania is one of my players who like to ruin everything, and I say that with love. I say the word ruin with love, lots of love.
I think we've all played in each other's games, and because of that, I can say that I was always the player that did what I was told. So I was the
lies.
The fact that he said that with a straight face, I will tip my hat to you, sir.
Do I need to remind you of what Therial did to those poor people?
What? Therial didn't do any such thing.
Did exactly as he was told to do.
I did do exactly as I was told to do. I was told to get them out of their houses, and I did.
Setting the house on fire is not getting them out.
But they left. And what did you expect? I mean, everybody else had tried knocking on the door. It wasn't working. So I just burned the damn place down. There, you're out of your house now.
Yeah. See, Raven remembers getting blown up by your character.
That was an accident. That was an unfortunate mishap. You shouldn't have been in the way. What can I say?
No, there have been many times where, for sure, as a DM, like we've had to kind of like push our own agenda aside, like everything that we prepared, push it aside and just be like, okay, what are the players doing? And even then, a really, really, really good DM can figure out a way to weave what they want to say and tell through what the players are choosing to do still. Because they're like in my other guild, like I still had story beat points that I had to drop for the players. Like they had to figure out certain things, or they had to come to certain conclusions, or they had to find a certain item, and they had to get it done. Like I technically was on a schedule because of how the guild was set up. So I still had things that they had to do. But instead of, railroading them and making them stay on the track, I let them build their own track, and then wherever I felt like it was like kind of cool or convenience or whatever, I'd be like, oh, by the way, you find blah, 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 or you run into so-and-so, or you get this bit of information from a random NPC that I made up on the fly.
I'm gonna to interject there on that whole railroad thing, because that gets tossed around a lot, and I think it only sticks in maybe half, probably less, because like railroading to me is an unavoidable. Basically, actually, I watched. It was actually in one of the videos that you shared. The whole there was one point that the five trope thing that
Oh, the
actually
5
might come up.
cliches.
Yeah, that might actually come
Yeah.
up in a later episode that we might discuss somewhere down the road. But one of the points there was the bit about choices not having
Any
like
consequences.
not necessarily any consequences, but they all come to the same outcome.
Yeah.
No matter what the choices you pick, they all kind of lead to the same. That to me is railroading.
Yeah.
That to me is railroading.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what you described is, again, there are certain narrative points that not just you, but a DM in general has to hit to tell whatever the story it is that they're trying to tell.
Mm-hmm.
Or at that point, there is no story to tell.
Well, it really depends on what type of, what is the game that you're playing, and I don't mean like what game are you playing, but what is the type of game that you're playing? Is it a campaign style game where you have continuous play and you intend to play these characters over a longer period of time, or is it a one shot? Because if it's a one-shot adventure, then the potential for you being railroaded in that sense, in the sense of the word that you guys are discussing, is higher because there's an actual outcome to that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, even and I'll counter you on that. Even in terms of a longer form campaign, to tell again, and I can't stress this enough. The DM and the players are telling a joint story from different perspectives. Mm-hmm. Now, the GM has a story that they want to tell, like we've discussed this a number of times, Greg, but an overarching story. And the players have their own personal story within that. Now, to tell that story, the overarching story, there are certain points that have to be hit, or there's no story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So for people to be like, oh well, it's railroading if you make your characters go here or do that, it's really not, because the way they get there is probably going to be different every time. Like if you could rewind time and play that over again, I'm pretty sure you're going to get 50 million different approach. It's like Groundhog Day. You'd get 50 million different approaches to that point. But at a certain point, if you're going to tell that story, whatever the story is, they have to hit that point because it's a necessary point in the story.
And that's something like with Aramania saying, like, having a goal in mind is good as well. Like when it comes to, like, at least the role play that we all seem to like, it's not necessarily the destination. Like the destination is our like, we see it down there, right? But getting there, that's the fun part. That's the journey part. And it's enjoying the journey of how we get there, which turns and roundabouts and whatever else we do. That's all fun. Like, for instance, Armani will remember this back in the Vanguard days when the first place that we were at was going to be destroyed. Like the goal was it's going to be destroyed. We're not going to go back there. We're going to get a new guild hall type situation. But how destroyed it would be and how treacherous it would be was dependent on the various different orders achieving certain goals. And if they didn't achieve those goals, we had prepared what would happen if they didn't achieve those goals. And the Vanguard at the time, they had to protect the pillars that were holding the place up. Because if we didn't, then the whole place would collapse, which would then also could possibly lead to more character deaths for all of the other orders up above us. And so the Vanguard rolled, like it was all going to be based on the roll, based on people's RP, and based on how people did was going to be whether or not they succeed or not. And the Vanguard actually did succeed at it. And for the last pillar is my favorite story. For the last pillar, I had this gigantic ice troll. And then I had this crazy ass rogue in my group. Her name was Aramania. And she got on top of the freaking thing and stabbed it in the back of the head, like Legolas did with like the cave troll and like shot it. She totally pulled a Legolas on him and killed him. And I was like, oh, damn, there goes my way to at least destroy one pillar. Was it the Grim? I thought it was or the Ogrim. Yes, it was the Ogrim. Yes, it wasn't a troll. It was the Ogrim. Yeah. She just pulled a Legolas on it and climbed up the thing and killed it. And she rolled it for it all. And she got it. Yes, they did kill her mentor. But yeah, like it's those type of things where like my goal was to get them through this so that way like they have to save the beams, but if they didn't, this is what would happen. I had that. But my players were able to save it because A, they rolled well, B, they RP'd well, and C, they were pulling off some epic RP moves that I was just like, they're having lots of fun, and I'm having fun reading this.
See that and, that style. I'm sorry, I apologize. I cut you off there, Sarah.
I was just gonna say, after that event, I was accused of railroading. I was like, are you kidding me? I had multiple different outcomes waiting to see which one would happen, and then I went with that. It was all based off of character play, character decision, and character roles. It was all based off of that.
that style of game, I mean, that type of game is episodic. That's yes. What you were doing, is you were preparing an episode and then yes. playing through the episode. You had, essentially that story was happening once a week, and you had 2 hours to tell the story.
Twice a week and 2 hours per.
Twice a week, 2 hours to tell. You can't tell that I played in those, can you?
Ariel setting the house on fire.
Hey, I did other things. I was part of that whole battle thing you were talking about too. Only I was part of the Inquisitors at that point in time, and
yeah.
I killed
when you were
snake.
Vanguard. When you were Vanguard, you were able to convince an entire fortress of orcs that you were supposed to be there as you walked in as a high elf with white armor on. And the rest of us are trying to sneak and we're failing at it.
Yeah. What was with all the sneaking around business? These are orcs. But, yeah, a game that is episodic in nature like that, though, that is... The unfortunate part is that you do... Ideally, you create different scenarios, so there are different possibilities, but essentially, you've already kind of created a path to follow and a flow to it. Especially when you have an overall end in mind. And that, just to explain a little bit to our audience that are not familiar with this, this episodic nature of these events, this storytelling, was based on an overall theme that changed every month. So you essentially had 4 weeks to tell out this story, and then the theme would change to something new. So it comes to that railroading question. Well, yes, of course that's going to happen because you only have 4 weeks to...
You only have so long to get it done before the next chapter starts.
Right.
That did change later on, but I won't get into the semantics. But that did change later on, so that way it was a bit more, we would decide if we think like this story theme would take 6 weeks or 8 weeks to tell, and like this next one, maybe 3 weeks to tell, that type thing. We did change that up a bit after a while, but still, it was episodic, like you said. We had to. It was kind of like doing a show type situation, and it's like we had our seasons, and we had to get our episodes done. But even in that type of tight parameter, I still allowed what the outcome would be based off of player choices. Roles and the RP people would do. Like if people didn't participate in the RP at all, then I was just like, sorry guys, it sucks.
Well, that's all part of when I'm talking about player agency, that's what I'm talking about. Because the player has to be able to engage in the story, and
they have to be invested. If they don't
Exactly.
feel like their character's invested, then they don't care about the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that brings up completely off topic, but since our host has stepped away for a moment, I'm gonna drive in whatever damn lane I want. But
okay.
I
I'm gonna drive my bumper car right into yours.
I pay taxes on all of it. Anyway, this idea of, okay, when it comes to that piece and the player agency piece involved with that, oh my god, I just lost my train of thought. Anyway,
well,
wow, maybe I am getting old.
For me, from my experiences in player agency, maybe this will help you remember it. But anyways, I'll talk about my experiences in player agency.
Okay.
I had two experiences. I had one where it was episodic, where we had our structured RP, and that was nice. It was very nice having a structured RP for a certain amount of time. But my other experience was also with the butterflies, where we had like zero structure. It was whatever you want to write your story to be. Have fun, have at it. It was total sandbox. And we all created our own little castles next to each other of a story. Like if I were to ever show you Piper's family diagram, it's freaking flow chart of like, I don't know, 100 characters. But we created our own stories and like our own little worlds and our own little families in this little world of Tyria. And so there's different types of player agency, but it's like it still has its focus, still has its direction. And I think that's what a lot of people forget, is that having no focus, having no direction leads you with chaos, complete chaos, not just fun chaos, like complete and utter chaos, because then anyone can come in and do anything. And when it comes to the structured RP, like sometimes it can be too structured or too stringent or too, fill in blank. And then with the more open one, it can be too open. It can be too freeform, to whatever, where it's just like a blob and just blah. So
yeah, I think that's where my thought was going, was just centering on what we were talking about there and that player agency piece, because when it comes to the narration part and structuring the overall story, a lot of times for the DM, you don't necessarily start out with what the players have in mind. And, starting a new adventure, and this is actually one of the challenges, especially in D&D, that DMs face. And some people have figured out a good methodology behind this. There are some systems that provide you with a very good methodology behind this, but it's how to get started. How do you pull this team together? The automatic piece is that we all just assume that they're together. Pop, here you are, everybody's in the room, and we're all going to go on this grand adventure. And we've experienced this because it's a very easy trap to fall into.
Yep.
So you have to figure out that lead-in piece, and that is generally the responsibility of your narrator, your GM, is to figure out, okay, now I have this group of people, and I know their strengths, their weaknesses, I know their differences. I got a pretty good idea of how the character wants to tell this story and play this character. So now, how do I bring these folks together so that it seems seamless and we can actually tell a story together and have it make sense? Not like, some omnipotent hand came down and grabbed you and threw you all in the same room together.
That hand in Super Smash Brothers was hard to beat, okay?
Indeed. That is a huge challenge, I think, for most DMs, especially in larger systems like D&D. But there are games from the game development standpoint that have done a very good job with creating the opportunity just by the mechanics of the game. The character creation process allows you different connection points that are created through the character creation process where you can join that team together.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. That is one of the harder things, I think, for DMs and just the narration position and anything like that is, like you said, Greg. It's making it where the players come together as naturally as possible. Because I mean, the reason why I say as naturally as possible is because the unspoken contract when you enter, when using D&D as an example, or any collaborative storytelling process, like in any tabletop game of that vein, when you're coming into that session, you know, whether it's the first session or the last session, you're agreeing to tell a story together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, you're already, like, the fact that you're sitting at that table, you're agreeing to tell a story together. That's the expectation of everybody sitting at that table. How we tell the story, totally different story. But we've all kind of agreed that, hey, we're going to tell this story together.
And I think that's key. We, the group, including the GM, we're all going to tell a story together. So many times you get players with egos and narcissistic individuals, and people are like, I want to tell my story. Well, if you want to tell your story, go write a book.
Oh, you stole my line. Oh. I
agree with your line, okay? We are telling a story. That's part of the reason why I love to do role play games, and I'm enjoying tabletop role play games more than MMOs, because it's a story we are telling together. And I love that collaborativeness. That's why I really enjoyed being the DM for my other guild in ESO, because I really enjoyed the collaboration that happened amongst myself and my other colleagues, but then the collaboration with the players who came to participate in our episodes. I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. I still look back on it and I'm just like, that was a lot of fun. I miss it. I miss those days.
So not to like take us, well, we've been kind of off topic for a while, but we're on topic with things, but we're wandering a little bit, and I think that's fine. I just had a thought occur to me about the community piece, and listening to what Sarah's saying, because I think that's the powerful piece there when it comes to that style of RPG. And here's the thing about that is based on some very loose guidelines that are essentially set up, typically using the lore of whatever game, and then some loose guidelines to manage player behavior more than anything else. And it's amazing the community that has grown up around that, and the potential for RPGs to develop these communities. They're kind of homegrown, and people that are attracted to them. I mean, it's not necessarily cultish in nature or anything like that, because everybody has an opportunity to engage and look at what's going on and decide for themselves. Hey, do I like this? First off, do I enjoy this game? Am I into storytelling? Do I really want to, use my imagination in that way and tell a story based on what these folks are doing and what I can add to it? I can create the character that's in my head, probably the character that's in my head from the game itself, because I think most of us do that. We kind of envision, when we create our character in the game, regardless of how stuck you are into that character creation piece, because that seems to be a very common phenomena where, now you're even one of my favorite games, which is Cyberpunk 2077, where, your only option is to play V. You can play him in a male, you can play a female, her and a female. You can design what she looks like, but you're V, period.
Yeah.
And that that opportunity to come in, because we all have our own headcanon. My character's not V. It is in the game, but it's not V. That's not what's going on in here. My character is probably a version of what I would like to imagine myself being in that world. Not necessarily, not all people view it that way, but the role-playing community and role-playing games in general offer you the opportunity to expand upon that and to play that. The other piece that I just want to throw in there when it comes to that community piece is the opportunity that it offers you to really flex something that most of us, we all tend to create stories from a very young age. We create our own stories. Now, most people, those stories don't go anywhere. You know what I mean? It's just imaginings, and you're playing when you're a child, and then as you get older, you either one, quit expressing that because social norms dictate that you don't express that kind of stuff, or two, you just suppress it to the point where everything is everything is outside of yourself, and the internal story is not there. I'm an avid reader. I love a good book, and I not just fantasy novels. I read a wide variety of things. No smut and no romance novels. But anyway, I just thought I better make that clear because I could see the comments forming in Sarah's mind.
Do I need to pull up a certain picture?
Wow. That's a tasteful picture.
That's like
it is a tasteful picture.
Left field
it's a very tasteful picture.
And anybody can see that. I know what picture you're talking about. Anybody can see that picture just by simply going to the YouTube page for Razzmatazz, and you can see the picture that she is talking about. And it is a very, I think it's a very tasteful picture, and it's actually a picture of two characters that were created in the ESO universe. One of them I played, and the other one Sarah played. I'll
let you guys guess who played who.
Yeah. Take a wild guess. But yeah, I mean, I do kind of want to roll this around a little bit to, as some of you know, in the background, part of what brought us here in doing these live streams and creating the content that we're creating on Twitch is the projects that we're working on in the background. We've been working together. There's 4 of us. We've been working together in content creation for a while now, over a year. And we've done various projects. At the beginning of this year, we started a brand new project, creating our own world, our own RPG game. Part of that was motivated by all the, if you're familiar with it, all the OGL conversations centering around Wizards of the Coast and all that stuff. So we just decided, you know what, we're going to develop our own mechanic system. We have, between 80 and 100 years of experience in role-playing, film, media, all rolled in this team. And I really wanted to kind of share a little bit of what the imaginings of what we've been working on. We're buried neck deep in developing mechanics at the moment, but there's a lot of story ideas that are kind of floating around out there as well.
Yeah, a lot of inspirations coming from different mediums, other TTRPGs, stories that we've all read growing up as kids or as adults, games we've played. We're kind of taking inspiration from those kind of things. And I mean, I think it was actually you, Greg, that found the actual genre that we're creating. So it's called the genre is actually called arcane punk. It's a blend of magic and technology. In the I'm gonna say the distant future, but we haven't developed a concrete timeline as of yet. So it might not be too far in the future. It might be, way down the line. We don't know yet. Those are all kind of still in flux, but it's definitely something that is going to be unique. And at least from my perspective, we're definitely going to try to put the best of what you guys have seen so far into the game as much as we can. But it's definitely not going to be something every day, I guess is the way I'm going to put it. But yeah, we're in the process of testing our combat system right now, and it's going well. But I am reminded of why sometimes being a game designer and game creator can be a bit of a drag. It can be a bit of a drag sometimes for those of you who've never done it.
I am just hoping that I guessed correctly based on what Gemma was saying. I could have been completely way off with that. Sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm paying attention. I promise I'm paying attention.
Right now we're doing all the really not so fun stuff that's important when it comes to the system that we're working on, because there's a huge amount of
have a podcast of just Greg reading smut.
Yes.
I don't think he.
Thank you for that, Garrus. Appreciate
I don't
that.
think he's. I don't know if he's up for that though.
Yeah, you are.
Here to help.
You're helping a lot, Garrus. I like you. Stick around, please.
We like Garrus. Garrus is a good fella.
Yeah. Speaking of Garrus, though, well, I'll get into that in a moment. I don't want to derail Greg anymore.
Yeah. Well, we're so game system. We're kind of buried neck deep right now in mechanics, and playtesting has been the making sure that the system works and all that good stuff. Story though, there's some story concepts out there that we have been talking about, and I don't want to try butchering that. So would you have a pretty, I know that we have talked about several concepts so far. Would you like to kind of give a little taste of what we're looking at, Sarah?
Can you please repeat your question without so many ums and pauses? Because my short-term attention span was like, I have no idea what he's talking about.
Pay attention.
I am paying attention. I was just
trying. Paying attention to talking about smut.
Yeah, look, you're over there in the. I had to back away from that because I was getting myself in trouble unwittingly.
Are you talking about the different types of concept ideas we've had for our TTRPG?
Yes,
just things we play.
You heard.
Oh, okay,
absolutely.
See, I was paying attention. So, anyways, I think arcane punk was the best way to describe it. To be honest. One of the ideas was for sure to do a cyberpunk-esque, the main things to do a cyberpunk-esque type of game. But unlike cyberpunk, we weren't going to base it on Earth. Or if we did, it would be more like the Shannara Chronicles type situation, if anyone ever read or watched that. I'm not saying that was a great show, so don't be like, oh my god, it's a horrible show. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying the idea and the premise of it was actually quite intriguing, and I found it interesting.
The books are great. The show, not so much.
Yeah. I would love to read the books.
Books are great. I read them when I was a kid.
But the idea of it is, I find it interesting. I find it intriguing. So we could do something ish like that, but take it more cyberpunk and less post-apocalyptic, maybe. Um, Another idea would be to just create a completely different world with all your typical fanciful creatures, but like uh kind of like slowly open the world up as we build it. Um the other idea was to we're debating between like having Magitech or not having Magitech, which is something we've been discussing for a while. I am all for it as a Guild Wars 2 player, and my main character is an engineer. I'm all for Magitech. I think it's great, which basically is just combining magic with technology. But the whole thing about building a world or building a game when you want to include magic is how do you want to build your magic? And that's a completely different can of worms that we have been wonderfully avoiding for months. We're like, we don't want to tackle this yet. We're still dealing with all of the other things that are not fun to deal with. And then we keep talking about magic as if we know what we're talking about. It's great.
Well, but we're getting there. We're getting to the point where that elephant in the room is going to become front and center.
Yep.
You bet, Old Man Garrus.
Just call him Old Man. We can just say good.
I will just call him Garrus because us old men are respectful of each other that way.
All right, whatever you say, Old Man. No, like we're getting there. It's just like there's a lot to digest. There's a lot to figure out. There's a lot to deal with. So we're kind of just taking one slice of the pie, dealing with that. The other big slice is going to be how we want to incorporate magic, how we want to write it, how we want it to be used and not used in the world, etc. Oh, that movie. And then also try and decide like what world, whether or not we want it based off of Earth or on Earth or not Earth at all or completely somewhere else, a different realm type situation. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to be decided, and as we make those decisions and get further along in the project, we'll be definitely letting our community know. And who knows? Maybe when we get to a testing phase, some of you guys might be invited to test some of it.
We will be doing some. We'll be doing some live stream testing. When we get to that.
I like Old Man's suggestion. There we go. We have our thing right there. Perfect.
Statler and Waldorf from the Muppets.
Yeah. Perfect.
But with that said, back to kind of what I was actually alluding to about Senor Garrus over there. He
Don't you mean
may be joining us in an upcoming episode here soon. We're working out the particulars, but
you're not distracting anything. You're totally fine.
Yeah, we're in talks with Old Man Garrus over there about having him join us on the show. More information to follow as we get to that point. He won't be the first. Well, he'll be the first, but he won't be the last, I should say.
Oh, wow, Rob. Way to go, man.
Are you tired, Rob?
I'm a little bit.
Well, we are going to we are going to start doing some guest spots on the update log. And we do try to be.
I was the first guest.
We do. Wow, you just ruined what I was going to say, because I was going to say we do try to be selective, but.
Wow, rude.
But apparently, we let any kind of riffraff in here.
I'm not guessing. But yeah, we are, we're looking for people right now in the Twitch community that we can bring out. It is nothing but love for Sarah. So we're looking for people in the Twitch community that we can bring on and that that we can have a good discussion with for the audience, and that we feel have something that they can really add. And we are also looking outside of the Twitch community. We have some connections that in the industry that we're looking to tap into, bring some actual designers, game developers, on the show, and actually get like some inside scoop from those people as to, what is going on. What do they do? What is their job like? And what was the thinking process behind some of the aspects of some of the more popular games that are out there, such as WoW, which we're looking at doing that in the future.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much what Greg said. But as those kind of those lines develop, we will let you guys know. But with that said, we are about at time. Before we kind of wrap up here, I want to say thank you again, as always, to our audience for joining us tonight for episode 9 of the Update Log, and for past episodes and hopefully future episodes, you guys will join us again here every Wednesday night at 2000 EST. It's 8 o'clock for those who don't know. But that is not the only thing that I want to get to. We will actually have another show that we air on Friday nights at the same time, but I'll let Greg talk more about
that. Yes. So we actually have 2 that we are doing this week.
Oh yeah, that's right, we are.
Yeah, tomorrow night we periodically, actually going right along with the conversation we've had tonight, we periodically do special episodes, which are a one-on-one episode, which allows that player to really kind of do a bit of a deep dive into their character, and tell a piece of their character's story. Tomorrow night, we will actually be telling a bit of Ring's story. Ring is one of the characters from our Friday game. The Friday game is a Cyberpunk Red game. I'm going to say Cyberpunk Red-esque because it is a homebrew of that system. And I'm glad you're excited. We do that game every Friday night, 3 hours from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. It is an episodic story. We have a team of 5, I believe, right now that are engaged in that story. Definitely invite you to check it out. It's got many twists. It's a very in-depth story. It's not just a bunch of dungeon crawly type of stuff. There's a lot of backstory pieces in it, and we mix in because of what the characters actually do in the story. We mix in a good bit of down and dirty cyberpunk stuff. I'll put it that way. But yeah, please do come check us out. Check out tomorrow night, so you can really see what Ring is all about. Ring is actually a fairly new character in the game, but she is a very interesting character. It'll be exciting. It's exciting for me, and I'm going to be there. But to see this story, and then join us Friday night.
Oh, you want to see a ferret? I can go get a ferret. Give me 2 seconds.
Guess we're going to go see a ferret.
Yes, because apparently you can't end the stream unless you see a ferret.
I mean, I control the stream. I can do whatever I want.
Oh, please. You wouldn't want to disappoint the old man.
Wow.
I'm all about disappointing people. What are you talking about?
I apologize for her, Garrus.
I say old man with love.
Oh.
So originally I had 4 ferrets, but 3 of them died within a year. I think my camera froze. Okay, no, there it is. So this is my baby girl. She's gonna be 3 in August. Technically, if my actual baby is born on the day he's supposed to be born, he's gonna be born the day before her birthday. So, but this is Kimber. She is very
Little
sleepy.
Kimbar.
Yes. Yeah. Fun fact, I named her after my gun.
Fucking loser.
Fuzzy butts indeed.
Yeah.
Noodle cat. Cat snakes. What else? Carpet sharks. My dog is like totally focused on her. This is his favorite person to play with. He loves to play with her. Ain't that right, Kimber girl?
I see you sneaking around there, Insomnia.
Yep.
Thank you, Garrus. I love the name Kimber. It's a great name.
Yes, thank you for joining us at Insomnia Night. As always, your lurking has been noticed. It's very much appreciated. But with that in mind, we are going to close out the stream. Again, thank you guys for
thank you very much for the follow, Just Legendary.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Before you close out the stream, here's a project I'm working on. It's almost done, Aramania and Raven. It's almost done.
Wow.
Yep. Thanks for interrupting.
I wanted to show them this.
Awesome.
Anyway.
That's perfectly fine. Yes, see you tomorrow, Garrus. Yep. Thank you very much. Looking forward to seeing all you guys tomorrow. I think we're going to raid out to... Awesome. Thank you, Armania.
Thank you for the second month sub.
I think we're going to raid out to Lord Gisumba, who is also a potential person that we will be having on the stream in the future.
Yep.
Talk a little bit about Greyhawk and some of the old school D&D stuff, right along with his version of it. And with that, thank you very much for being here.
See you guys.
Everybody have a good night.
Yep.
And I have to go find my